Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Sunderland's squad depth, where it's at after the transfer window, and also how much of a problem will the African Cup of Nations be. So please like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this sort of content. Let's dive into Sunderland's squad depth. So I'm going to whack it up on the screen. It should be there, I think. So hopefully it is there. Sunderland's squad depth though, and I think you'd probably agree with me here that Sunderland's squad looks pretty strong right now. We've obviously got in nets, we'll start there, Robin Roofs and Patterson. Robin Roofs is clearly established now as the number one. Patterson has played in the Championship and, you know, is imperative to our promotion. He's a strong player. I quite like Anthony Patterson. Look, I don't think he's necessarily a Premier League goalkeeper, but he's certainly not a bad backup. We move into the defence. Ronaldo, Masuaku and Dennis Serkin at left back. So the three options there that are steady, to say the least. Ronaldo's really impressed. We haven't seen much of Masuaku. And we don't know if Dennis Serkin will take the Premier League football, but certainly the three of them players there, I think, are more than adequate to cover that position. Moving into centre-back, we've got Alderete, 09, Elise, Ballard and Mukwele. And obviously, Elise can play at left back, Mukwele can play at right back, 09 can play pretty much anywhere across the back four. So we've got plenty of options and depth in there. At right back, Hume and Gertrude, and both of them can also play at centre back. So there is a lot of versatility there. Masuaku as well at left back is playing at centre back. Ronaldo can play at centre back as well. So we've got loads of players there that can fill in those centre back positions and full back positions. There's a lot of depth there. You've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You've got 10 players for the 4 positions. And we've also got players like Leo Hjelde who I haven't put on here. But I think Sunderland look pretty set defensively. Moving into the midfield, we have 6 players that I think are going to be in and around the team this season. Siddiqui and Lefay, Xhaka and Neil, Diarra and Rigg. And again, I think you'd look at that and say it was pretty strong. Siddiqui, Xhaka and Diarra have really impressed in the early part of the season. Dan Neil, obviously an unknown commodity in the Premier League, but I do think that he will have a chance at points this season. You can't expect Granit Xhaka to play 38 games, so I think he will come in there. Then Lefay and Rigg, we're not 100% sure on what to expect there in the Premier League. Lefay, we've already seen he can also cover the left wing, and he looks more than good enough to play in the Premier League this season. We move further up, we've got Adingra and Mundle on the left side. We've got Bromley, Isidore Mayenda in the middle, and Talby and Traore on the right side. I think the forward area is really hard to analyze. Brobby is an unknown in terms of the Premier League. We don't know how he'll do. He had a poor season last season, but is that because of the circumstances around him? We don't know that yet. Isidore Mayenda look like they are potentially Premier League forward players. Isidore's obviously scored 2 goals. Mayenda has led the line in the first 3 games, so you'd think that they're good enough to play in the Premier League. On the wing, Adingra, we know is Premier League quality. Mundle, of course, is injured. We're not going to see him for a little while. And then on the right side, Talby, it's been, you know, I think he looks like he's comfortable playing in the Premier League, but he hasn't excelled. It's fair to say it, but it's only been 3 games. And Traore has played in the Premier League before, so he should be okay. You know, he played at Aston Villa, and he's played a lot of games at the top level. So the forward level, I think, if I'm being brutally honest, I think our front line is probably the weakest area of the team. But that isn't to say that it's not going to be good enough to score the goals that we need. Anyway, there is a giant elephant in the room, and I've had some comments asking to go through the African Cup of Nations and what sort of impact that will have on Sunderland. So I'm going to sort of go through that now and see how damaging it could potentially be for us. So as a baseline, let's go through the competition, how it works. It starts on the 21st of December and the final is played on Sunday the 18th of January. So it's pretty much a month from start to finish. The competition works, there are 6 groups. Top 2 teams go through automatically into the knockout stage, and then 4 third place teams make it through the next round. So it's quite similar to the Euros. I think the Euros has that weird third place team, which I don't like. You can't finish third and qualify for the knockout stages. Stupid. But anyway, that's that. The knockout games take place then from the 3rd of January to the 6th of January. So the group stages finish, the knockout stages start from the 3rd of January, quarterfinals the 9th to the 10th, semi-finals the 14th, the final on the 18th, as said before. So that doesn't mean we're going to lose players all the way through to the 18th of January, because obviously only 2 teams make it to the final. But how likely is it that we're going to miss lots of players for a period of time? Well, I'm going to go through it now, and look, I'm looking at essentially the betting odds to give me an indication as to who will miss and as to who will be back quicker. I don't know enough about African football to do much more than that. So we're going to go through the players that are there anyway. So Chemsden Talbi, he plays for Morocco, and they are hosting the tournament, and they are favourites to win the tournament. So the chances are, even if Morocco has a bad tournament, they will get through the group stages. They'll probably get through a couple of knockout stages. So he'll be missing until, I would suspect, until probably the end, the 18th of January, but maybe the 10th of January if it's the quarterfinals, the 14th if it's the semi-finals, but you'll certainly be missing well into January. Ronaldo at Mozambique, they are likely to exit at the group stage, so he should be back heading into the start of January. The group stages finish on the 31st of December, so in theory, Ronaldo, provided that Mozambique don't have a masterful run at the competition that no one expects, he should be back by the start of January. Habib Diarra, well, Senegal are the fourth favourites, so you'd expect that he'll be missing until the middle of January. You've got Simon Adingra, they are the sixth favourite with the Ivory Coast, so again, you would expect that he'll be missing well into January. Arthur Masuaku and Noah Sadiki are with Congo, and they are the 10th favourites, so they could potentially be missing late into January, but there's no guarantee there. They could go out maybe in the first knockout stage, which is between the 3rd and the 6th. They could go out in the group stage, which obviously means they'll be back at the start of the month. We've got Ahmad Abdullahi, who I don't think will make the Nigeria squad. And we've got Bertrand Traore, who plays for Burkina Faso, who are likely to exit at the group stages. So to review that, we've got probably Ronaldo and Bertrand Traore, who I'd expect to be back for sort of the start of January. Let's go through then what this really means. So it looks like generally there are not warm-up games for the African Cup of Nations. They don't seem to play games the week before, which means that our players will play the Newcastle game, which is set for the weekend of December the 13th. That will be the last we will see of these African players before they jet off and go play in that tournament, which is obviously very good because that Newcastle game is pretty imperative, and I would expect that Sunderland would probably, talk to the FAs anyway and say, look, the players have to be released after this because it's such a big game. So fingers crossed, there should be no worries there. Sunderland should have their best team for that pretty imperative game against Newcastle on the 13th of December. But what games will most of our players miss? I expect all of our African players to miss Brighton, Leeds, Man City and Tottenham, and also potentially miss Brentford on January 7th if we give them a break after the tournament. I think all the players, if they were to go out in the group stages, any players that go out in the group stages will probably be back for January 7th against Brentford, but they'll certainly miss Brighton, Leeds, Man City and Tottenham. So that's 4 games there. And look, you look at that there, the one that stands out is the Leeds game at home, which is the 27th of December. That is a game that clearly we would be desperate to win. So that's the massive loss there. I think Brighton, Man City and Tottenham are going to be difficult games to win either way. So even if we had our fully fit squad, it would be really difficult to pick up points there. But the Leeds game, that's going to be frustrating if we were to drop points because we were missing a group of players. I think we've got players like Talbi, Diarra, Adingra, Masuaku and Sadiki. They'll potentially get to the later stages of the tournament. So that means they'll miss the FA Cup third round weekend on the 10th of January. And if they reach the finals, they'll miss the clash with Crystal Palace on the 17th of January. And I expect any players that would make the semi-final or the final would miss that Crystal Palace game. But everyone should be back as normal for the West Ham game on January 24th. Now, what does this mean for squad depth? And I've got, again, a nice little thing coming on the screen now. Let's just sort of go through how it hurts Sunderland. So obviously a goalkeeper, fine. In defence, we lose our 2 left backs. We would have Dennis Cirkin in there. The rest of the back 4 would be as normal. So that's not a massive issue. In midfield, we'd be looking at Xhaka and Neil. Should still be there. Then we'd have Lefay and Rigg. So we'd move our midfield depth into being essentially Lefay, Xhaka, Neil, Rigg. So we'd only have 4 players there for 3 positions. So that is obviously a massive concern. Now the caveat with that is that Gertruda, you've got even Trey Hume can do this. You've got O'Nine can do this. We do have a few players in the defensive area who can move into the midfield if needs be. And the depth that we have at the back, I suspect, will be used to help supplement the midfield if we have injuries. And that's the other thing with this. We can look at squad depth all we want, but Sunderland can pick up a litany of injuries. It can happen, and it could mean that things look very, very different come January. In terms of the forward line, on the left side, we'd obviously lose Adingra, so we'd have Mundell, and he should be back fit by then, providing he can stay fit. Our front three would stick around, so Bromley, Isidore, Mayenda, they would still be here. And the right side, both Talby and Traore would be gone. But as mentioned earlier, I'd expect Traore would be back pretty quick in there. Now, what does that mean in terms of the right side? I could look at that and go, you're probably going to have to try and find a way of putting either Isidore or Mayenda on the right wing, or moving Chris Rigg in there and shuffling around the rest of the team. That's probably the one area where we look particularly short, is that right side, and that could be the issue, and that's the main issue we have with this. But look, the squad is going to be majorly stretched with the African Cup of Nations, and there can be no denying its impact. And I think the decision the club had to make was, is it worth buying these top quality players, getting them probably at a cheaper rate as what you would get English players, certainly, but certainly European players. We're getting them for a cheaper rate, but the sacrifice is you're going to miss them for a minimum of Brighton, Leeds, Man City and Tottenham, potentially add on that another 2 Premier League games. So you're losing 6. It's a 38-game season, but 6 games, it's a sizable chunk of the season. And to lose players for, nearly somewhere like 15% of the games, that is quite, a blow for Sunderland. So that was the decision that they made. And look, we'll know at the end of the season whether or not it was a risk worth taking. If we lose all 6 of those games, and that's what costs us survival, then we'll look back at this and go, oh, I wish we'd not relied as much on African players because of AFCON. But hopefully that won't be the position that we are in. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful for you in looking at Sunderland's African Cup of Nations players and how much it will impact us. As I said, they should all be back for the 24th of January. And by then we could sign players as well. Who knows? We could have players lined up for the 1st of January to help this African Cup of Nations equation. We don't know that. So thanks for watching, everyone. Please let me know in the comments below if you think the African Cup of Nations will have a big impact, and we'll catch you for another video very soon.